On the other side of that track, we've got Mark, who's going to continue, as you heard. You would have heard, actually, when we did a show with the Police and Crime Commissioners, when Mark put certain questions to the Police and Crime Commissioners, and he asked them to read a report that he'd written based around some of the research that he found on. Well, Mark, you explain a little bit more to people.
Yeah, it's a drug and alcohol recovery campaign that I've been running, along with support from Unite Community and others. And I was raising those issues with the Police and Crime Commissioner, particularly around the issue of funding. It's primarily about peer-led initiatives, proper peer-led initiatives, along with professional input, because I think that's very important as well. And as I was discussing that with them. But I wouldn't mind giving a quick update, because there were some slight technical problems with last week's show, which we've dealt with. Just giving some updates to people, which I think there's been some very interesting developments in that Turning Point have won the contract in Leicester. They carried out a service user consultation a couple of weeks ago, which was absolutely fantastic. We'll have to see what they do when they open the new centre in September. But so far, so good. It looks very, very promising. They have a very good reputation in terms of service user engagement, listening to service users and empowering them, and service user-led initiatives. But also tying that in, like I've mentioned, with professional input. So it looks very good. The feedback I got from service users who attended it was also very good, and they want me involved in that process. So, you know, I'm very excited about it. So I want to encourage people out there, current service users and previous service users of quality of life, to get involved, to make sure that we get your feedback, Unite Community get your feedback as well. And, you know, we can push. We've got a very good relationship with the commissioners, a very good relationship with key members of the council, who've been very supportive of what we're doing, and we have the union supporting us. So we can really push to get a return to the quality of life type service which we used to have in this city, which was fantastic. And I believe there's a willingness from Turning Point as well to do that very thing. So it's looking so far very, very, very promising indeed. So, you know, great.
Okay, so that sounds, that does sound interesting. But I mean, in terms of, you was talking about, you know, certain, you know, in terms of service user led, could you expand a bit more on the service user led aspect of?
Yeah, it's the quality of life service was primarily service user led. I always emphasize that, in my view, it's essential to have professional input in it as well, because service users and peers can give you bad advice as well as very good advice. But the quality of life, and why it was so revolutionary, quite frankly, was that it was a upstairs downstairs situation. Professionals were upstairs. You'd have a professional key worker who you'd see once a month. But downstairs, people were in the gym, the cafe, the drop-in rooms, the people you would speak to on the reception when you first engaged, and who would interview you and fill out the forms with you, were all service users or former service users who'd become staff members.
That's in, because, all right, okay, in terms of that, I'm going to give you, because, okay, there's always, and I don't like being, because there's too much negativity. There's been too much negativity actually tonight. But in terms of looking at something where I could see something in there, I'm thinking to myself, because in terms of like carers at the moment, people who are caring for older people, I mean, at the end of the day, some of them feel like they're put in this position and they're told by the government, oh, it'll be great for you. You know, you can care for people in your own home and you'll save the NHS thousands and thousands of pounds. And then when the actual project starts, complications start to sink in. People start to get a bit disgruntled.
Yeah, you see, a lot of these organisations say that they're into service user-led ideas and concepts, but they don't deliver, or they deliver very poorly. And there's a fine line. Something very progressive in terms of a peer-led concept of a recovery project, and something that's really just a downsizing model, on paper or with the spin, can sound almost identical. So, and you've got to be very careful in the way that you do it, because you can argue, yes, we're into this peer-led initiative, and we'll have service users, and really you're just getting volunteers in so that you can get rid of staff, and you just tick all of the right boxes. One really important issue, for example, is that a lot of these services will have an abstinence-based structure. so that you have to have people who are already stable to engage. They will then tick all of the boxes so they get the right results so they can continue winning contracts. But 80% of the people out there who aren't stable are in need of help, therefore don't get the help because they're not stable enough to engage with a structured program. So it's, you know, you need to be open up to it. You know, it's about saving people's lives, not ticking boxes.
And I mean, it's, as I said, I've you know, it's the same way you can have volunteers within a voluntary organisation, and after so long you can exhaust your volunteers, which means then, you know, you're pushing them into the ground without probably realising it sometimes. Maybe you may think that, you know, you are doing them a favour. And I mean, sometimes I'm not, you know, because it's a great idea. And, you know, some people that I know look at it in a way of saying that there will be casualties, in terms of saying we'll never get it right. So there will be casualties. So you'll have these people at the bottom that will always be getting crushed, whilst they try and sort out what's going on at the top.
Yeah, one example of what was fantastic about quality of life, and that's why we want to return to that kind of model, and it looks like we've got a good chance of getting that, in my view, is they would listen, genuinely listen. It was run by probation, and they would listen to you. So one example of how that works in practice was they go to the service users and say, right, you guys, you know about it, you're on the street living in all this insanity. What would make it more attractive? What could we do that would make it more appealing, more attractive, and would increase our chances of engaging people and those people sticking with us? So what the system was that you would go into the reception, you would say, you know, I've got a drink problem, or I've got a drug problem, and I'd like to come to this service. They would put you down for an appointment, maybe a week later, in which time you could just fall off the wagon, or you could just go back into some misadventure, or you could, the worst case scenario, you could die, or you could end up in prison or something. And then you'd be interviewed, then you'd have to wait for, and I said, we don't need that. You need to make it as quick and as simple as possible. So that when you come in off of the street and you're ready to engage, you have an interview there and then, it's as quick as possible, and you can immediately engage with the service. So they did it, and it worked. And an example of me, I might have been thinking of doing something stupid. Yes, I would engage with professionals, and that help was absolutely priceless. But on a day-to-day basis, I would go and sit down with a guy who, from a council estate, half of their life would have been spent in prison. They've been through the worst experiences, they've done some of the worst things, but they'd completely turned their lives around. And I would sit down in a room, have a coffee with a guy like that, and those would be the guys, those guys would get under your skin, get into your head, know how to communicate with you properly, know exactly how you're thinking, exactly how you're feeling, exactly those places that you've been, and they would be able to convince you that maybe there was a better way of picking your choice of behaviour. And it worked, and it turned people's lives around. And some of these people who you would just cast aside, pass in the street as being scumbags or chavs or just worthless people, are actually some of the most intelligent and creative and imaginative and valuable people imaginable. It's about empowering them in such a way that they can prove that. Quality of Life did that, and we need services like that all up and down this country. That's what I've been campaigning for.
I mean, I know that I was watching a programme this morning where, you had the programme about young people who were admitting themselves into hospital because basically what it was they just wanted somebody to listen to what they were saying. So because nobody outside of obviously outside of that space would listen to them, so that would probably be your schools, whoever else. What they were doing was actually, overdosing on tablets to be admitted into hospital, because when they went there, the people would ask them, are you okay? You're all right, how can we help? So in them doing that, obviously these young people would then say, look, I need help, this is happening, I can't live my life. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so it sounds something where I get your concept, and that's what I mean. Because that's kind of like something similar where, at the end of the day, people, I think that's all people sometimes need, somebody to listen to them, which is, for some people it's a luxury, but for others,
necessary. It's necessary for survival and their sanity, and that's where it ties in with community as well, a broad concept of community recovery. I'll come into that a bit later.
Okay. So yeah, all right, we're going to play a song. We'll spend a bit more on this, Mark, because it's getting quite interesting.
Brilliant.
After this short song, we'll play a short one actually, and then we'll continue. See you on the other side.
Ooh.
if you just bear with me, I'm not going to play this track because the last time when I played it, I've actually got on this CD, which I whipped out from just anywhere, the uncut version. So yeah, I can't play that on here. Sorry, not at this time.
All we want to do is what we love. Making the music for the people. But it seems every now and then in this game you run into obstacles to try to hold a man back from getting his.
Yeah. And welcome back on the other side of that track. Yeah, that was Have a Break by DJ. I can't actually say his name neither on the radio because his DJ name's explicit. We've told the guy before that you can't use that name, mate. But yeah, it can't call his name, not on the radio. So that's a track called Have a Break, and it's by a guy who originates from Singapore, moved to London, and now lives in the UK. So yeah, anyway, Mark, so you were saying something about community recovery.
Yeah, this recovery campaign that I've been running has a broader aspect to it, which is about community recovery. So it's not just about drugs and alcohol, and it's not just about service users of drug and alcohol services. It's a broader model of recovery, a peer-led type model, which should be taken out into communities. So for example, when you've got guys who've been in and out of prison, but they've turned their lives around, shouldn't those guys be talking to young offenders and guys on the estates? Because you're going to listen to these guys, you know? The youth and the parents are going to listen to those guys. Guys, there's a stigma with people who've had drug problems. Well, shouldn't you have these guys talking in communities to parents and to kids and to youths. After all, they're more likely to be listened to than some professional or some middle-class social worker.
But I think that in terms of that, you know, what happened within the youth service a few years back was they upped the game, where they like kind of took people who'd had those, you know, in the 80s, 90s, they did take people in that had experiences, who had grown up in difficult situations. And they seemed to employ those people before anybody else. But as time gradually moved on, they started putting in place, obviously, you need this qualification, you need that qualification. And I believe that as jobs slowly started to dry up, they started like then throwing in, you now need a degree to be a youth worker. So, you know what I mean? As time gradually moved on, you lost that element. So is what you're saying that maybe they need to go back to...
Yeah, or people can just do it themselves, you know?
Within their own community.
Yeah, because it's also about housing. You look at the 4C15 mums in London, a bunch of working class single mothers. They got up and they're now running a major campaign across London. Look up 4C15 mums and Google that and check those out. So it's about housing issues, it's about fractured communities, it's about people living in poverty, it's about that airbrushing of the most impoverished members of the working class who were just seen as scum, quite frankly, by the mainstream narrative, and it's about them beginning to empower themselves. Think community is one model for doing that. Recovery communities is another model of empowering those people, but it's out in the communities themselves where they need to do that. It's about offending and guys who are in and out of prison and substance misuse and mental health problems and housing and jobs or lack of jobs, life on council estates.
But I mean, I've worked around people who have had, you know, those kind of ideas themselves, and you know, but their ideas have been more about, say, within a particular remit, within a particular area. So if we took Thurmby Lodge as our point of reference, within Thurmby Lodge would have the understanding of taking care of those that are probably not doing as well as others, and ensuring that people pay their rent and they pay their gas. Then also somebody else was talking about, and I mean it's happening now as we speak, turning whole areas. So one whole particular area would sign up to Npower, the Npower, yeah, for their gas and electric. And if Npower raised their prices to a point where they couldn't, said, oh, that's unacceptable, the whole area would threaten to go to British Gas.
That's exactly the kind of thing I'm talking about. That's one of many initiatives that could be used. It's about on-the-ground grassroots empowerment. It's basically campaigning and organising and defending each other, but the people who are left out and airbrushed and the most impoverished and their voices aren't being heard. It's about those people needing to step up onto the platform, and maybe they need to do that themselves. You know, this community recovery concept is about doing it. So you get peer mentors, peer-led initiatives, but it's about all of those problems that we have, and using the model of a service like Quality of Life, which worked, and using it in all of those different areas where we have problems. So if it's about crime, if it's about housing, if it's about mental health, it's about people needing support, if it's about poverty, it's about voices living on the council estates. People don't know about the realities of people going out there. We're going insane. It's horrendous, and it's about those voices. It's all about Benefit Street and such nonsense on the TV. So it's like, let's get those voices heard and empowered, and let's learn what the reality is really like. Thousands and thousands and millions, indeed, of people out there across Britain. Because things need to change, and those voices need to be heard. We need those people in here. We need those people stepping up onto the platforms and empowering themselves and their people.